So yesterday I woke up pretty early and decided to go to the gym with my girlfriend. Pretty normal day. And then we went to the grocery store after, bought stuff to cook for lunch. And then we're in the middle of eating the lunch we just cooked. And it's around the middle of the day at this point. And I go on Twitter and I see that a school that is in my home state is trending. And that's never a good sign. And let me get this off the desk. And so that's never a good sign. And I decide, all right, I guess I'll click the tab. And to no surprise, the first mass shooting at a school in this school year has occurred. There was a 3-month-long gap between school shootings, and the only reason for that is because of summer break. The only thing that stopped it was that kids simply weren't in school. And we saw that we see that pattern not only every break, but we also saw it during COVID. And unironically, COVID probably saved more kids than it killed due to that fact. And I believe 4 are dead. And they took the 14-year-old shooter. 14-year-old shooter into custody. The 14-year-old killed 2 other 14-year-olds, a 39-year-old and a 53-year-old. Here are the names of the victims and their ages, as reported by ABC News. The GBI released this information. I am glad to see that no one's naming the 14-year-old shooter. Because we don't need to be giving out the names of these morons, of these evil psychos. And, it reminds me of a time where if I was still in school, I would have been horrified to go back to school. I'm not in school anymore, obviously. I'm 22 years old. But when I was in school, all of the mass shooting events happened outside the state. And so there was a bit of a disconnect there where it's like, oh, well, it's not happening here. Even though we were still feeling the ripple effects of it. Every time there would be a new large-scale, record-breaking school shooting. And even with that said, we still had an incident where a person brought a gun to our school. They were gonna shoot someone who was in a quote-unquote rival gang. Whatever the fuck that means at that age. They brought a pistol to school, and someone reported it, and they got caught with it before anything happened. And, even growing up, when I was in elementary school, Sandy Hook happened. And I remember after that happened, it was towards the end of the first semester, and I just remember our teachers all being super strict on, like, okay, we have to lock the door to the classroom now. If you need to use the restroom, when we would come back from the restroom, instead of just opening the door, we'd have to knock and wait a couple seconds for a student to open it. That was new. We had to be taught where to hide during a code red more often. I think before it was like once a semester you'd be taught what to do during a code red. And then after that, we actually started practicing code red drills. I don't really remember ever having to do that before that year, before my 5th grade year. And that was like my first look into, so I might not be as safe as I thought at school. And fast forward a few years. In 2018, as we all know, another school shooting occurred. And yeah, the Parkland High School shooting. This time in a high school. And it was record breaking. And I remember I was a sophomore in high school. And that one was a little closer to home since it happened in Florida, just one state below me. And I remember having to do not just a code red drill, now it was like an active shooter drill. And we had a teacher that was very adamant that we had a go plan in place. We all had a set time during the day where we'd have to practice it. And so all of a sudden they would call for the drill, and we had to practice picking up the desk, the big table, putting it against both doors. We had a back door and a front door. And then setting up a barricade to hide behind. You know how crazy that is? That we had to, at the age of it ranged from 14-year-olds to 17-year-olds in that class. Maybe an 18-year-old here and there. But we were all pretty much teenagers. Children. Learning to barricade the classroom in case someone brought a gun to school. And that was an interest that I didn't feel safe anymore at school after that. That changed the whole tide of that school year. That's the defining moment I remember from that part of the school year. Is I remember when we had to start practicing active shooter drills. And, since then there have been other mass shootings, obviously, at other various schools. There's that infamous one. It might be the same one. Or no. This is Uvalde. A couple of years ago, Uvalde. Where the cops just, should we go in? And just completely wussed out of going into the situation and stopping it. And even back then, we had the same conversations. Where's the gun reform? It's a gun problem. It's so clearly a gun problem. Other countries don't have these issues at the scale that we do. There are more guns in this country than there are citizens, and only half the people in this country own the guns. And, other countries don't have this issue. A country like Australia, the only gun owners in Australia have to go through strict licensing processes if they even are allowed to own guns in Australia. Since the gun ban, to my knowledge, there haven't really been any mass shootings at all in Australia. European countries don't have this problem. I've seen the dumbass conservative take for years now of, well, they have knife attacks in Europe. And I'm like, what is your fucking point? Yeah, we have that in the US too. You know what the difference between a knife attack and a mass shooting is? In a mass shooting, you can kill an untold number of people, multiple people, in one go. In a knife attack, it's one or two people get stabbed before that person gets taken to the ground. One or two at the most, pretty much. They're never that severe. You know, a large-scale attack in Europe usually involves like an explosive, or like in France, in Nice, where that person drove a truck into people. That's the kind of attack we're talking about in Europe. In the US, it's like constant mass shootings. I believe the last one before this was in June, right before school let out. That was the last school shooting. And this one is just in the long line of, in a long line of school shootings in this country. It's so common. And it doesn't help that it happened in Georgia, which, we've been saying for a couple of years now, ever since the governor, Brian Kemp, decided, you can now have unlicensed open carry, pretty much. Or concealed carry. Or you can literally just carry a gun around with you with no license. Background checks were loosened. And I don't understand the point of that. The only gun control we have in this country, which I never see conservatives crying about, which is, it's technically a Second Amendment violation, but they don't care, that felons can't own firearms. You know why they don't care? Because they weaponize the prison system to lock up minorities at unprecedented rates. Thus, when they eventually get out, they cannot own a firearm legally anymore. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they don't care about that. And, they're like, oh, we're going to loosen background checks. Why? People that have domestic violence charges now have a higher chance of getting a firearm in this country. In this case, it's a teenager who just took their parents' gun, it seems. Another situation of irresponsible gun ownership. I've already seen people saying that the parents could be held responsible. The FBI, the Atlanta division of the FBI, I actually have the post, tweeted this out. This is so embarrassing. Why they would admit something like this. It's just so embarrassing. Look at this. The FBI Atlanta responded earlier today to the Apalachee High School following reports of an active shooter. Throughout the day, the FBI personnel have been coordinating with and supporting local and state law enforcement. The FBI will dedicate all available resources as requested to seek justice and bring closure to the victims and their families. That should have been where this post ended, but then they decided to continue. In May 2023, so a little over a year ago, the FBI's National Threat Operations Center received several anonymous tips of online threats to commit a school shooting at an unidentified location and time. The online threats contained photographs of guns. Within 24 hours, the FBI determined the online post originated in Georgia, and the FBI's Atlanta field office referred the information to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office for action. The Sheriff's Office located a possible suspect, a 13-year-old male. Interviewed him and his father. The father stated he had hunting guns in the house, but the subject did not have unsupervised access to them. The subject denied making the threats online. Jackson County alerted local schools for continued monitoring of the subject. At that time, there was no probable cause for an arrest or to take any additional law enforcement action on the local, state, or federal levels. They then have a follow-up tweet to confirm the subject referred to as the 13-year-old is the same subject in custody related to today's shooting at the high school. Why would you post this? Why would you admit to something like this? You can even see memes. The FBI, he was on our radar. Every time he was on our radar, We had some idea of, that this was going to happen. It's so popular. There are multiple versions of this meme. Look at that. These are not all the same ones. Say the line, he was on our radar. Say the line, FBI, he was on our radar. Say the line, Fed, he was on our radar. There's so many versions of this. The patch Photoshop here. Why would you admit to something like this? So many times, dude, I keep hearing, oh, they were on our radar in our system as potential threats. Oh, and we just referred it to the local police with no sense of urgency. And, let's talk about solutions. The Republicans want to talk about, oh, it's a mental health crisis, a mental health crisis. Why didn't they immediately advise the parents get this kid some help, if that was the case? And also, they gut our mental health services in this country all the time. So the fact that they cry out that solution all the time is laughable. It's not even the only thing that they tout. They tout, oh, why don't they put metal detectors in the schools? Which makes kids feel unsafe. Having to go through a metal detector inherently makes them feel unsafe. Clear backpacks. Ooh, the kid is going to put the gun in the backpack and it'll be right there on display. Or it'll deter them from even putting it in the backpack in the first place. They make them practice active shooter drills. I just talked about how those active shooter drills scared the shit out of us. It made us feel insanely uncomfortable for months. I think the only thing that made us take our minds off of it was the fact that the school year ended 3 months later. School has been in Georgia for like a month. It's the beginning of the school year for these kids. And the solution is so clear. It's gun reform. It's stricter gun laws. More oversight, more punishment for people who don't lock up their guns properly. People who don't keep their guns away from their children. If anything, I'd go as far to say everyone in the household needs a mental health evaluation before you purchase a firearm. There needs to be a national registry for firearms, not one that like states can opt out of, which I've read apparently. There is a registry that they can just opt out of. It needs to be required. If I have to register my car, I have to register my gun. That's just how it works. That's how it should work. You should have to tie your name to that firearm. You want to give it to someone? Guess what? You got to transfer the title like you would a car. There's a reason why cars have to be registered. They can be used as weapons. They can be used to get away if you're committing a crime. It's a way to identify someone if they've committed a crime. It's also a weapon. If you don't know how to drive, guess what? You don't get to drive a car. That's just how that works. If you don't know how to safely operate and store a firearm, and it's very clear that you have some horrible intentions with that firearm, you don't get to own it. Republicans love to, like Steven Crowder, people like him, like to go into gun stores and be like, what if I was planning to use this firearm for nefarious purposes? And then the gun owner is like, I'm not selling you this. Because they, become suspicious of the fact that you're saying weird shit like that. Yeah, you can do that all day. But if you go into the gun store, your intention is to do what this kid did. And you go, yeah, I'm just going to use it for hunting. Meanwhile, in your mind, oh yeah, I have a history of mental health issues, and my intentions are to use this in a mass shooting. The gun owner, the gun shop owner doesn't know that. They're going to go, okay, just fill out these forms. Here you go. No mental health evaluation, no psych evaluation, none of that. It should be insanely strict to get a firearm. You should have to go through checks. That is the only way to make it safer in this country. People want to talk about, what about the illegal firearms that people get their hands on in places like Chicago? And I go, look at the origin of those firearms. Look up where those guns came from. They came from Republican states like Texas. Texas is a huge exporter of illegal firearms, a state with lax gun laws. There was a shooting, I think the Uvalde shooting involved a gun that came from here, from Georgia. Another state with lax gun laws, another red state. Voted blue a few years ago. It's a red state. Another state with lax gun laws. So I don't like hearing from people that, gun laws aren't going to change anything. The gun isn't the problem. What's the common denominator in all of these cases? It's a gun. You know, you want to talk about mental health? Yeah, take a mental health evaluation. A strict one before you get the permission to buy a firearm. That should be how it goes. You know, the other solution after Parkland I saw was in Florida. They were like, what if we just had teachers be armed? Are you crazy? Do you know how many unhinged teachers would be killing students? Have you not seen how stressed some teachers get? You don't think there would then be cases sprouting all along the country of teachers killing students? On top of that, the burden that would put on the other teachers, the ones that don't have that in mind. You know what kind of burden that would put on those teachers? Not only do they get underpaid to teach, now they're being underpaid to protect the students with a firearm? What is the point of having law enforcement? You know, what's the point of having a security guard in the school? You're going to arm the teachers. So many times, these are so preventable. And we have the solutions. We have the solutions to a lot of problems in this country. That the biggest roadblock are lobbyists on the conservative side of the aisle. That brainwash the people in this country into thinking, oh, these are just inevitable divine problems that we will never escape. Let's just ignore all the other OECD nations that don't have these issues. Let's just ignore those. You know, those don't exist. They're in special fairyland. They aren't as free as us. You know, they don't have those problems because they aren't as free as we are. We're free. And these are just divine, the cost of freedom. The cost of freedom is that, the cost is that, hundreds of kids have to die every year in a school shooting. I'm pretty sure the death toll of children, gun deaths in school shootings and whatnot is over 300 at this point. That's the cost of freedom in these people's eyes, is the mass slaughter of children every year. These are problems we have solutions to. You know, these people who are like, yeah, but all I use my gun for is to hunt. Yeah, motherfucker, these gun reforms wouldn't affect you. If you're sane and you're responsible, guess what? You get to keep those hunting guns. You want to go hunting? Go for it. These laws would not affect you. If they do, that means there's probably something wrong with you that's preventing you from owning a firearm. So that's the solution, is stricter background checks, mental and psychological evaluations, and a gun registry, so we can track where these firearms go and who owns them. And there needs to be a regular check every, let's say, 2 to 4 years. Every 2 to 4 years, there needs to be a reevaluation and a renewal of that registration. And it's just the cost of owning a firearm. This is how it is in every other modern OECD nation that has people that want access to firearms for whatever reason they need them for. Those countries have these rules in place. Gun deaths would drop, not even just mass shooting in schools, mass shootings in public places, in private places, gun deaths in general, the suicide rate via gun would go down significantly. All of these statistics, it would be nothing but good if we had gun reform laws like that. Nothing but good outcomes could come from that. You know, places like the NRA infinitely fund the gun lobby in Washington. Not just Washington, they infinitely fund it on a state and local level. They have hands everywhere. It used to not be like that either. Before Ronald Reagan, the NRA was not like that. But that's just the way things go in this country. You know, there's a lot of other things that could be solutions to begin the gun reform solutions, which would be, reversing Citizen United and getting rid of lobbying in the way that it currently operates, getting, campaign finance reform. All of these things would then lead to stuff like gun reform, as well as other good things for the country. But at the very least, we need gun reform. And apparently Kamala Harris already commented on it like a couple hours after the shooting. I'll show that. Also, the audio is horrible, so I apologize in advance. I don't know why the audio is like this.
So before I begin, I do want to say a few words about this tragic shooting that took place this morning in Winder, Georgia. We're still gathering information about what happened, but we know that there were multiple fatalities and injuries. And, our hearts are with all the students, the teachers, and their families, of course. And we are grateful to the first responders and the law enforcement that were on the scene. But this is just a senseless tragedy on top of so many senseless tragedies. And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive. It's senseless. It is, we've got to stop it. And we have to end this epidemic of gun violence in our country once and for all. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. So we will continue, of course, to send our prayers and our thoughts to the families and all those who were affected, including, I'm going off script right now, but listen, at the last year, I started a college tour. And I traveled our country meeting with our young leaders, right? And so it was college-age young leaders. So I did trade schools, colleges, universities, community colleges. By the way, I love Gen Z. I just love Gen Z. Right? But I'll tell you, one of the things I asked...
All right, that's all I needed to hear from that. I will say I am sick of hearing the thoughts and prayers thing. That's the line that Kemp immediately hits, the line that Representative Mike Collins immediately hit, who's from Georgia District 10, which is where that high school resides, by the way. I fucking hate Mike Collins. Why am I getting campaign text from his campaign when I don't live in that district? And you know what I've been responding to with all those texts now? I keep responding with, why do you support the mass killing of children in our schools? That's what I keep responding with. Dude, Mike Collins, if you've heard that name before and you've seen his Twitter account, you know what I'm talking about. Mike Collins has facilitated an environment like this. A no rules, no holds barred, you should be able to have your gun no matter what. And don't let the government take that from you. The blood of those victims are on his hands. Not just his hands, on Brian Kemp's hands and every Republican who has refused to pass gun reform in the last 15 years. 20 years. I forget how old I am now. In the last 25 fucking years. Their blood is on their hands. So anyways, I will give a fun fact to end the episode on a lighter note. And you should go check out articles on this and you should go read up on it. And you should call Mike Collins and voice your opinion to him. Call him, email him, do whatever you have to do. Go visit fucking Congress and go to his office and tell him what you think. Go up to the state capitol and tell him what you think too. The Georgia state legislator, Brian Kemp, all of them need to hear from you. And especially that representative in the U.S. Congress. Because there needs to not only be a state level gun reform, there needs to be a federal level gun reform. Go check out this article. It details stuff about the mass shooting, what rifle was used, all of that. I do not think they actually named the student. Thankfully, I don't think they do. If they do, then ugh. I hate it when they name the person who did it. Um, but go read this. It gives a pretty oh, they do name them. Fuck, dude. Why? Go read this article and read the details. I hate that they named the gunman, dude. And yeah, go call Mike Collins. Your fun fact for this episode: when children are very young, I was listening to a story from Let's Read on one of the episodes, and it was about like creepy children's stories from parents. And this kid asked his mom, "Why do?" Or the kid was like, "Can you see what's in my head?" And the mother was like, "No." And according to child psychologists, the reason why, as a parent, you can say, "Don't do anything bad at school because I will know if you did something." It's because kids can't differentiate between their mind and your mind. They think everyone's mind is connected. So they think you really do know when they're doing something bad at school, hence why that line works. Another example is kids that when they come home and you ask them what they did at school today, they'll just be like, "Oh, I just did stuff. Oh, I didn't really do anything." It's because they think you already know what they did at school. I just thought that was a cool little fact, and kind of shows just how a child's mind develops and how just a human's mind develops in general, and how they kind of develop their own sense of self as time goes on. I hope that kind of lifted the mood a little bit, but my point still stands that call your representative. If you live in Georgia District 10, you need to light that motherfucker's line up. You need to light up his line. You need to tell him what you think, because this needs to stop. Tomorrow's episode will be about Blake Chappelle. It's a cold case in Georgia. So that'll still come out tomorrow. And then there will be another episode next Friday. So try to have a good week. And yeah, this is horrible. And I hope I don't have to make another episode like this ever again. But sadly, I think that will be the case in this country. That I will have to make another episode yelling about something like this. So, all right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See ya.